You were never taught how to be powerful. You were trained to be pleasant, to be agreeable, to be nice. You learned that availability is a virtue, that showing up for everyone else meant you were worthy of love, that if you were always present, always patient, always soft-spoken, someone would eventually notice you, that someone would pick you. But here's the part they never told you. Being endlessly available doesn't make people value you. It makes you invisible, and you feel it. Every time you reach out and get silence back, every time you give everything to someone who gives nothing in return, every time you're there and no one sees you. Because what you thought was love was just fear. Fear of abandonment, fear of not being needed, fear of being alone. You've been told that to be loved you must offer yourself completely. And now you're exhausted. You're pouring from a cup that's been empty for years. You're not being admired, you're being used. Carl Jung said that people wear masks to survive in society. But what happens when the mask becomes your only identity? You've spent so much time showing the world your nicest face that you've forgotten what it's like to say no, to not show up, to let them feel your absence, because you're terrified that if you stop being available, you'll stop mattering. But that's a lie. The truth is brutal, and it hurts. The more available you are, the less valuable you become in their eyes, because people don't respect what they can access at all times. They respect what they have to earn. And you made yourself free. You became an emotional convenience. And now, you're wondering why no one treats you like you matter. They don't see you as a person. They see you as a service, something that's just there. Always you were conditioned to think this was strength, that this was maturity, that this was love. But what you've really learned is self-erasure. You erased your boundaries to accommodate theirs. You erased your voice to make room for theirs. You erased your needs to avoid being called selfish. And now you don't even know what you want anymore. You just want to be seen, to be respected, to be chosen without having to bleed for it. But that doesn't happen when you're always available. Availability isn't love, it's a transaction. When given without boundaries, it becomes desperation. And desperation doesn't attract love. It attracts users, manipulators, people who will take everything you give and then walk away like you never mattered. And deep down you know it. You've seen the pattern. You feel the resentment building inside you every time someone treats your kindness like weakness. Jung believed the psyche isn't fooled by masks for long. Sooner or later the shadow breaks through. That part of you you've been suppressing, the anger, the bitterness, the exhaustion, starts to leak into your smile, and people sense it. But instead of asking what's wrong, they pull away, because they were never there for you. They were there for the version of you that served them. The moment you stop performing, they vanish. And that hurts. It makes you question everything. Were they ever real? Did they ever care? Or was your presence just a product they consumed? One that stopped being useful the second you demanded to be treated like a person instead of a resource? If this message spoke directly to your silence, write, "I'm reclaiming my voice" in the comments. And if you want to walk this journey with us, subscribe. There's so much more we need to heal together. You need to understand something. Respect isn't given to the most available. It's given to the most self-respecting. And self-respect begins with boundaries, with saying no, with not showing up when they expect you to, with letting them feel your absence. Because only then will they realize what your presence actually meant. But that requires risk. It requires walking away from people who only liked the version of you that stayed silent. It means facing the fear that maybe no one will chase you when you finally stop running toward them. And yes, that fear is real. But it's also the beginning of your healing. Because the part of you that is always available is not your strength. It's your wound. It's the wound that says, if I give more, they'll love me more. But love that depends on your sacrifice is not love. It's dependency. It's control. It's manipulation. Carl Jung taught that healing begins when you confront the parts of yourself you've rejected. And this is your moment. The part of you that's tired, that wants to stop giving, that wants to stop being needed by everyone, that wants to rest without guilt. That part isn't selfish, it's sacred. It's screaming to be heard. But you've silenced it for too long. You were not born to be everyone's solution. You were not meant to carry their chaos while they watch you drown. You are not a backup plan. You are not a placeholder. You are not here to make their lives easier while yours slowly falls apart. And until you believe that, they won't either. So this is where everything starts to change. When you finally decide that your worth is not up for negotiation, that your time is not a donation, that your energy is not infinite, that your heart is not a garbage bin for other people's emotional waste. You think being unavailable will make them leave, maybe? But the ones who stay, the ones who fight to understand you, who value your time, who respect your silence, those are the ones who were meant to be in your life. The rest, they were never with you. They were with the mask. Let them go. Because when you do, you make space for something you've never experienced. Relationships built on truth, not obligation. Respect, not guilt. Presence, not pressure. And that begins the moment you stop being constantly available. And now, the real transformation begins. It always starts with the smallest betrayals. You cancel your plans to be there for someone who never shows up for you. You answer the phone even when your chest tightens with anxiety. You offer help when your own world is falling apart. At first, it feels like kindness, like love, like doing the right thing. But slowly it becomes something else, something darker, something that starts to erode your identity. You don't know when it began, but now it feels impossible to stop. You've become addicted to being needed, addicted to being chosen, addicted to the feeling that someone somewhere relies on you. And because of that, you keep saying yes, you keep sacrificing. You keep giving until there's nothing left of you but a smile stretched too thin. Carl Jung warned us about this, about the dangers of living through the expectations of others. When you let their needs dictate your actions, you lose connection with your authentic self. Your true voice becomes so faint you can't even hear it anymore. And eventually, you wake up wondering who you are beneath the roles you've been playing. People don't see your exhaustion. They see your consistency. They don't see your tears. They see your reliability. They don't feel your pain. They just expect your presence, because that's what you taught them, that no matter what happens, you will be there. But you can't live like this anymore. You're constantly drained, emotionally bankrupt, and still you keep showing up. Not because you want to, but because you're afraid of what will happen if you don't. You fear the silence, the rejection, the feeling of being left behind. So you overcompensate, you overdeliver, you give and give and give, and they keep taking. Because they don't see your humanity. They see your function. That's the part that hurts the most. You're not seen as a person. You're seen as a utility, a therapist, a fixer, a rescuer. And when you finally break, when you finally say, "I can't do this anymore," they look at you like you've betrayed them, like you changed, like you were supposed to keep playing that role forever. But here's the truth. It was never your job to save them. You only thought it was because you never learned to save yourself. Jung's work teaches us that every act of self-abandonment creates a wound in the unconscious. And those wounds don't disappear, they fester. They turn into resentment, into depression, into a quiet, unbearable rage that you bury beneath your smile. You want to scream, you want to disappear, but you won't. Because they need you, or so you tell yourself, but they don't. Not really. They need what you provide. They need your energy, your time, your validation. But they don't see you. They don't know what breaks your heart. They don't ask what you're afraid of. They don't care if you're drowning. They just want to be carried, and you keep carrying them because you believe it gives you value. But what if your value was never in what you give, but in who you are when you stop giving? That's the question that scares you, because you're not sure you like the answer. You've built your identity around service, around sacrifice, around being there. And the idea of stepping back feels like death, it feels like betrayal, it feels like losing everything. But Jung would tell you that this is not death, it's the rebirth of the self. Because the self that always says yes is not your real self. It's a survival mechanism, a mask you built to protect you from the terror of being ignored. And it worked, for a while. But now it's killing you. You can't keep doing this. You can't keep bleeding for people who won't even hand you a bandage. You can't keep silencing your own pain to soothe theirs. You can't keep performing emotional labor while no one notices your soul is collapsing. And you know this. Deep down, you know. But knowledge doesn't always equal action. You still freeze when someone needs you. You still flinch at the thought of setting boundaries. You still punish yourself for choosing rest. Because your nervous system has been wired for martyrdom. Because you equate peace with guilt. But peace should never feel like a crime. And yet it does. So here you are, caught between two versions of yourself. The one that wants to be everything for everyone, and the one that is screaming to be free. Let me tell you something Jung believed deeply, The tension between opposites is where transformation happens. You don't have to choose one or the other, but you do have to stop abandoning yourself, because the longer you stay in this cycle, the harder it is to escape. They won't save you, and it's not because they're bad, it's because they don't even see you drowning. You've made it look too easy, too seamless, too graceful. So now, you have a choice. You can keep being the person who always says yes, or you can become the person who finally says no and means it. That moment, when you set the first boundary, when you cancel that call, when you let them figure it out without you, that's when the healing begins. And what happens next will change everything. You didn't notice it at first, but something changed when you started saying no. The air felt heavier. People paused. Their tone shifted. That same voice that used to praise you for always being there now sounded disappointed. Not because you did something wrong, but because you stopped playing the part. And it hurts, doesn't it? The moment you draw a line, people don't call you strong. They call you selfish. But Carl Jung warned us, when you become conscious of a pattern, the world around you starts to react. The collective unconscious hates disruption. It resists change. And nothing is more disruptive than someone who refuses to be used the way they once were. So they test you. They guilt trip you. They remind you of all the times you said yes, hoping you'll crack under the weight of your own empathy. And sometimes you do. You give in just to quiet the noise, just to make the discomfort go away. But every time you do, you betray yourself a little more, until eventually you start to feel like a stranger in your own skin. You look in the mirror and see someone performing instead of living, and that's not freedom, that's emotional servitude. You thought setting boundaries would bring peace, but instead it brought backlash. You expected people to understand, but they didn't, because they weren't invested in you, they were invested in the version of you that served their comfort. And when you stop serving that comfort, you become inconvenient. Think about that. You, in your exhaustion, in your pain, in your quiet rebellion to reclaim yourself, you are now seen as a problem. Jung believed that the shadow, the parts of ourselves we suppress, often holds the key to our wholeness. And right now, your shadow is screaming. Not because it's dark, but because it's real. It's the part of you that's tired of pretending. The part that no longer wants to smile when it's hurting. The part that doesn't want to keep proving its worth by how available it can be. So what do? You sit with it, you listen, you ask the questions you've been too afraid to answer. What if they leave? What if they don't understand? What if you disappoint them? And then you realize all of those fears are about them, not about you, because you've spent your entire life being hyper-aware of how people feel about you. You've scanned every room for shifts in energy. You've adjusted your tone to keep people comfortable. You've stayed small so others wouldn't feel insecure. And now you're exhausted, not from life, but from managing other people's reactions. That's not your job anymore. Comment, no more being everyone's rescue if you're done breaking yourself to be seen. And don't forget to subscribe. We're building something honest here, and you're meant to be part of it. Let them be uncomfortable. Let them question. Let them gossip. Because if the cost of your peace is their approval, it's too high. Real growth, the kind Jung spoke of, requires individuation. A process of becoming your truest self, separate from the roles and masks you've worn. And individuation is not glamorous, it's lonely, it's terrifying, it's full of grief. Because you're not just letting go of people. You're letting go of the person you had to become to survive. And that person, while brave, was also a shield, a protector, a version of you built in reaction to a world that taught you love had to be earned. But love doesn't demand your exhaustion. And respect doesn't require your silence. You owe yourself more than just survival. You owe yourself a life, so let them be shocked. Let them say you've changed. Let them call you names. Because if the price of reclaiming your voice is losing those who only liked your silence, you've made the right trade. And soon something incredible begins to happen. The more you honor your boundaries, the clearer everything becomes. You start to see who actually values you for you, not just for what you do. You begin to attract people who don't flinch when you say no, who celebrate your growth instead of being threatened by it, who don't confuse availability with worthiness. You start to feel your own power return, not the loud, performative power of dominance, but the quiet, anchored power of someone who knows they no longer need to be everything for everyone. You stop chasing validation, you stop begging to be seen, because you finally see yourself. But with every layer you peel back, you discover a hidden truth. The person you were pretending to be was never real. That overly nice version, the one who said yes before even hearing the question, that was a survival instinct, a learned behavior, a response to a world that made you believe that your needs were a burden, and maybe they were, to the wrong people. You see, you weren't too much. You were just too real for people addicted to comfort. People who want love but not the honesty that comes with it. They want support, but not your struggle. They want your presence, but not your complexity. But you are complex. You are not here to be palatable. You are not a character in someone else's story. You are the author of your own. And every time you dim yourself to fit into someone's expectations, you rob the world of your depth. Carl Jung warned about this. He spoke of neurosis as the result of a life unlived. A life spent avoiding conflict, avoiding discomfort, avoiding truth. So don't avoid it anymore. Let the discomfort teach you. Let the grief purify you. Let the solitude reshape you. Because when you finally stop running from yourself, you realize you were never lost. Just buried under approval, under shame, under expectations. And now, layer by layer, you are returning. Not to the person they wanted you to be, but to the person you always were before the world taught you to hide. So when they come back, and some will curious, confused, maybe even angry, don't rush to explain, don't shrink, don't apologize. You don't owe anyone an explanation for your healing. Let your presence speak, let your silence teach. Let your growth be the proof. Because the old you would have begged to be understood. The real you has nothing to prove, and that's the power they never saw coming. You thought that saying yes all the time would make people love you. That being available would show them how much you care. That putting their needs above your own would earn you their loyalty. But instead you became invisible. And you started to wonder, what did I do wrong? The problem is not that you cared. It's that you cared more about being liked than being respected. More about avoiding conflict than protecting your energy. And the world saw that. They saw you cancel your own plans for people who never showed up for you. They saw you explain yourself 100 times just to avoid sounding rude. They saw you overgive, over-apologize, and overextend. And they took note, not to admire you, but to calculate how much they could get away with. Carl Jung once said that people will do anything, no matter how absurd, to avoid facing their own soul. And when you're always available, you're not just distracting them from their responsibilities, you're distracting yourself from your own wounds. Because being available to everyone means being available to no one, especially yourself. You became a buffer, a filter, a shock absorber for other people's problems. You thought your worth was tied to your usefulness. But that belief is a lie, a dangerous one. One that teaches you to equate love with self-sacrifice and attention with approval. You started to bend, then twist, then fold yourself so small that you forgot what it felt like to be whole. And still, they ignored you. Still, they disrespected you. Still, they left when you needed them most. Because availability without boundaries breeds resentment. Not just in you, but in them. The more you give without limits, the more they feel entitled, the more they expect. Until one day your no feels like betrayal, even though it's the first honest thing you've said in years. And then comes the guilt, that choking, burning, soul-piercing guilt, because you've been conditioned to believe that love must hurt. That being needed is the same as being valued, that staying silent is noble. But Carl Jung taught that real transformation begins with the death of the false self, the self you built to survive, the self that confuses being liked with being safe. You're not safe when you abandon yourself. You're not respected when you're always accessible. You're not loved when your love costs your dignity. It's time to stop playing the role. You are not their therapist, not their emergency contact, not their emotional landfill. You are a person with needs, desires, limits, and worth. And the more you ignore that, the more your soul begins to protest, not loudly but subtly, in fatigue, in anxiety, in depression, in that numb, hollow ache that says, something is wrong, something is missing, that something is you. But here's the truth no one tells you. When you pull back, people panic. When you stop answering every message, when you start saying no, when you choose rest over performance, they feel abandoned. Not because you wronged them, but because you stopped playing the part they cast you in. They don't miss you. They miss their version of you. The agreeable version, the always there version. The version that never made them look at themselves. So when you disappear, just a little, just enough, they start to question. Not you, but their own reflection. Your absence becomes a mirror, and not everyone is ready for what they see in it. Carl Jung believed that the people who trigger us are mirrors of our own unresolved inner conflicts. When you stop being their emotional crutch, they're forced to face their own limp, their own chaos, their own neglect, and some will hate you for that, not because you harmed them, but because you forced them to meet the parts of themselves they tried to bury. Right, I'm done shrinking if you felt any part of this message in your chest, and hit subscribe. We don't chase people here, we awaken them. But that's not your responsibility. Your healing is not a performance. Your growth is not a negotiation. Your worth is not up for debate. You are not responsible for managing how people experience your boundaries. You are only responsible for honoring them. And when you do, something shifts. You begin to reclaim time, energy, focus. You rediscover hobbies, passions, joy. You learn what it feels like to wake up and not feel dread in your chest. You walk into rooms and no longer scan them for tension. You breathe, really breathe, for the first time in years. Not everyone will like the new you. That's okay, because the old you was dying from the weight of being available to everyone but yourself. So let them misunderstand you. Let them say you've changed. Let them go if they must. You're not here to be understood. You're here to be free. And that freedom starts with choosing yourself every single day, even when it's hard, even when it's lonely, even when your voice shakes. Because the moment you choose yourself, you begin to rebuild the relationship you abandoned the longest, the one with your own soul. And that relationship is the foundation of everything else. Because when you know your worth, you stop giving discounts. When you respect your time, others will too. When you show up for yourself, the right people will show up for you. And the ones who only loved your availability, they were never really there to begin with. Because in the end, the greatest betrayal is not when others forget you. It's when you forget yourself, your voice, your boundaries, your needs, your essence. Carl Jung said that loneliness does not come from having no people around you, but from being unable to communicate the things that matter to you most. And that's what availability without truth does. It silences your soul. You spent years teaching people how to treat you, not with words, but with silence, availability, and self-sacrifice. Every time you said it's okay when it wasn't, you were giving them a lesson. Every time you answered the phone at midnight for someone who'd vanish when you needed them, you were showing them your price, and it was zero. You became free for everyone, and in doing so, you became valued by no one. This is the painful reality many never want to admit. We don't get ignored because people are evil. We get ignored because we trained them to believe we'd never leave. We trained them to believe our loyalty was infinite, that our patience had no end, that our presence didn't require effort, respect, or reciprocity. And they believed us, not because they're monsters, but because humans will always take the easier road. Carl Jung warned that people would rather remain unconscious than confront the uncomfortable truths of who they are. And when you're always available, you let others stay asleep. You become the cushion, the comfort, the mask that prevents confrontation. But here's the revelation. Your availability didn't earn love. It created dependence. And dependence is not the same as connection. You were not chosen. You were accessed. There's a difference. One honors your humanity. The other exploits your silence. So now the silence has to end. Not for them, but for you. Now you learn to say no. Not out of anger, but out of clarity. Now you disappear for a while. Not to punish, but to repair. Now you stop explaining yourself to people who never cared to understand you in the first place. You start walking through life with a new posture. Not one of bitterness, but one of certainty. Not cold, but clear. You're not hard to love. You were just surrounded by people who only loved what you could do for them. You're not too much. You were just too much for people who only wanted fragments of you. Let them go, all of them. Let go of the ones who only came when they needed. Let go of the ones who clapped when you broke yourself in half. Let go of the ones who said you'd changed, as if becoming healthy is a betrayal. You have changed, and that's the most beautiful part of all. Carl Jung said that the privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. But that journey demands a price. The death of who you were when you were still trying to be liked. That version of you, the overly available, endlessly forgiving, approval-hungry version, has done its job. It kept you alive. It helped you survive. But it cannot walk with you where you're going next. Because where you're going next, People won't love you for your usefulness. They'll love you for your truth, for your stillness, for your presence, not your performance. So take a breath, feel your body, look at your life, not from a place of shame, but of awareness. You don't have to explain your absence. Your peace will speak louder than your presence ever did. You don't have to justify your boundaries. Your new energy will filter what your old words never could. You don't have to scream for respect. You only need to respect yourself first, and the rest will follow. This is not just self-help. This is soul reclamation. This is the beginning of you becoming someone you can trust again. The beginning of a quiet revolution, where your healing becomes louder than their opinions, where your solitude becomes more sacred than their approval. And if you've made it this far, that means something in you is shifting. Something in you is tired of being tired. Something in you is ready to stop surviving and start existing. Don't ignore that voice. Don't betray it again. You are not here to be convenient. You are here to be whole. And those who truly see you, feel you, and value you, they won't require your silence to stay. They'll make space for your voice, for your truth, for your presence, even when it's no longer wrapped in service or sacrifice. So here's to you, the version of you who's learning to walk away from tables where love is conditional. The version who no longer begs to be noticed. The version who knows that being available to everyone means being lost to yourself. Carl Jung didn't want you to be liked. He wanted you to be real. And real is what you're becoming. Thank you for walking this path with me today. If something in this message found you in your silence, your exhaustion, or your breaking point, know that you're not alone. We see you. We honor your quiet strength. And we believe in your return, not to who you were, but to who you are. Stay with us. There's more waiting for you. The next video is already on the screen. Don't stop here. You've come too far to go back. And the next step might be the one that finally sets you free.